And good morning and welcome to a very, very special. I think I can't say very special enough every time I have my special guests on the show. But I'm going to say it again. Welcome to a very, very, very special edition of Truth to Power. And the reason why this is a very, very, very special edition of Truth to Power is because I've got some dynamic women and a dynamic gentleman on this set today. And one of the things that I'm very proud of is that because this is Black History Month, this is the month where there's a lot of firsts that are recognized by a lot of powerful black people. And this time we have a couple of very, very powerful black women on the set with us that were first in their positions. And we are very proud to say that. And I'm going to definitely go because I probably could not go and identify them enough. Because something I just heard is that you can't let somebody else tell your story. You are your story. So that's what, with my guests, they have a story to tell. And that's what we want to make certain that their stories are being told. My name is Darwin Griffin. I'll be your host. And we have some people that have a great, great deal of information. This is an interesting time now, only because of the fact that we just had a election and we had a president that made history. Uh, we've only had one other president in the history of the United States as president to be a president that won two not consecutive terms. Grover Cleveland was the first one, and now we have 45 and 47. I don't know what Grover Cleveland was as far as saying the demographics, what numbers he was. But depending on whether or not if you like him or you don't, or you have to respect the fact that he was elected. Donald Trump was president 45, and now Donald Trump is president 47. And what we're going to do today is we're going to pretty much like do a deep dive with all of the myths and the power of diversity, equity, and inclusion. A lot of people hear that term and they just hear DEI. They think it's a word, but it's not a word. It's an acronym. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what we want to do today with my special guest is we want to do a deep dive about how that takes place, not just in the corporate world, but also in your personal world as well. So today, we've got a couple of guests on the set with me. We're going to rotate some guests today. Right now, this was an idea that was birthed by a lady who's no stranger to Truth to Power, and she is Pastor Velma Jean Overman. Pastor Overman, welcome to Truth to Power today.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for the invitation and for allowing us the opportunity. And actually, we gave like a Siamese twin birth there. Ashley and I was working, and she said, I want to make sure that people are aware and we need to do something across the state of Michigan. And I said, let's make it happen and let's get it started. So, of course, the first thing we thought of was your phenomenal show, Truth to Power, and the access that you can allow
Appreciate
for so many communities that we actually touch. So, I'm very honored to be here. I'm here today in my role as the Western Wayne County NAACP and AACP First Vice President. And I'm also over the Community Committee Chair, where we want to make sure that as we talk about things that matter most to our families and to our community and to our labor, as well as our municipalities, and every single area of our lives are touched by who we are and how we stand and how we're represented. So when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I am very thankful that we can be here today for the next couple of hours and destroy myths and to bring truth. So thank you for the introduction and for allowing me the opportunity to be here.
And I'm going to let you do the honors, since you are a pastor, to introduce our other very special guest.
So this is just such an honor because as we think about First and we think about what we do and how we've done it throughout the generation and our legacy, to see our young women, particularly our young women of color, move in such strength and such power. And I'm a retiree of Ford Motor Company, so UAW for sure. Actually, fifth generation. My sons, their granddad, dad, the whole family were UAW members. So when I see young women that have made it to the top of their field and a part of the NAACP and touching so many, because to be a part of how we got together with this Detroit Public Television Network, and to say how that will be run, right? And to have our voices on the table, Ashley, is truly an honor. And to see what you're doing with your sons and just how you're leading the way. So Ashley Lewis, speak and take it, but it's so easy to introduce greatness, right?
Amen.
So there you are.
Thank you.
And
Thank
Ashley,
you.
I'm going to give you an opportunity because I usually take with special guests like you and Pastor Overman and LaShawn English and C. Pascal Easy.
Yes.
When she mentioned your family, because
Yes.
these are the shoulders here that's lifting up the greatness when it comes to the legacy of your three sons.
Yes.
They'll watch the show, so let Mama give them a shout out. Go ahead and give your three sons a shout out.
Yes.
I will. And actually, I always start off by saying that I'm a child of God, that I
That
am
part.
the daughter, granddaughter of Lisa Huggins, the daughter of Lonnie Lewis, and the daughter of Christine Lewis, and also the mother of Elijah, Isaiah, and Noah. Because I exist because they are and because they were. And
Amen.
so I always start there. And I want to thank you for that really kind introduction. And I'm grateful to be back to Truth to Power because at the end of the day, this moment that we're experiencing in history has so
Yes.
much to do with speaking truth to power. And I don't think people conceptualize that because DE&I was birthed out of the 1960s movement.
Absolutely.
And people don't recognize that it's not something that just came about when we had the incident with George Floyd. It was something that actually originated, again, out of the civil rights movement. And I can't wait to talk to Director LaShawn English about
Yes.
the labor roots, because before DE&I and the Civil Rights Act, we had to be inclusive in labor. We had no option, right? Because they like to divide us by our differences. And so labor was very instrumental in breaking down those differences so that they could not exploit our labor. So again, thank you so much for having me and for inviting me to this conversation.
Okay. Let's talk about the myths. Ashley, Pastor Overman. What first? Kind of go into detail about what is DEI.
Okay. You want to take that? No, you want me? Yes. You were already there with the civil rights movement, right? And that act.
Yeah, I was getting history right
where
there.
it
I
came
was
from.
hearing the history.
Where there's fair housing, equity. I mean, you were there, so
Yes.
take it.
Well, what I will say is, especially when you're talking about myths and you talk about diversity, diversity is all about bringing everyone to the table. So
Yes.
regardless of race, gender, national origin, for example, no matter what the differences were, there was diversity at the table. And I want to be strategic here in making sure that we make a distinction between affirmative action and DE&I.
Yes, yes.
Because affirmative action was more so that it gave you access to a space where DE&I put you in positions of power, to where you were actually able to create structural change within organizations and create what the other letters would be, which is equity for everyone, right? So that everyone has a voice at the table, and then that you were included. So
Right.
from the origination stage all the way up to the highest positions of power. And I think that one of the biggest misconceptions is that it's only for Black people.
Right.
In fact, that's not true. It's actually for really all walks of life. So whether it be, and in some cases they do consider socioeconomic status, disabilities, and I would say also the person who or the demographic that has advanced the most due to DE&I is actually white women. And so most people don't understand that. And one of the things that I always like to say is that we're not in opposition of each other. We are actually, clearly called to work together with one another. But I highlight that statistic because it highlights the fact that it is truly a myth that it is only for Black people. And another myth is that we are not qualified.
Right.
And we have to make that distinction because at the end of the day, when you go back to the 1960s, Black people didn't get access to boardroom jobs, boardroom level jobs. They were relegated to certain jobs that even back in the day with labor, it was the foundry, right? It was
Yes.
the really rough work that Black people were relegated to, and so DE&I was really pushing forth that there's no conceptualization of a Black person job or a white woman job. That at the end of the day, we are all worthy and equitable in our hiring practices, such that we have a better workforce that's more inclusive and that uplifts the issues of everyone.
Love it. Absolutely. And I think one thing when we talk about destroying myths, the one largest myth that I see and hear from so many different levels is it's already there, where you already have Black people here. You had a Black president. You're already leading the way. And so that not only alludes to not needing to make sure that it's incorporated in everything we do, it's saying that why are we doing it, right? And then you hear the things like, I'm the missing person, the 40-year-old white man. I'm not on your posters. I'm not included in any conversations with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Why am I left out if we're trying to include everyone? So there's so many different myths that we really can, and I don't know if destroy is the right word, but to bring some truth and give people the opportunity to leverage their thinking. Like, I want to be able to make a true, honest assessment of what I'm hearing, because to have our leader make the statement that the plane crash and all of those lives were a result of having, he literally alluded to DE&I being the cause, not knowing who the pilots were, who the traffic controllers were, just this huge mass opportunity to confuse people and to, again, attack diversity, equity, and inclusion. So prayerfully, as we bring more information and people get the opportunity to think it through, they'll see the importance of what has happened throughout time, whether it's the Fair Housing Act or the gender equality or the ability for me. And what blows my mind is my mother couldn't have got her own mortgage. She couldn't have got her own credit card.
People don't realize how that's,
I'm like,
that's
are you
just
kidding me?
Yeah.
that right? Like, we're putting so much money into the entire economy now. But there was a time where no matter what you did, you couldn't go to the bank without your husband or your dad.
Yes.
And that's while I was alive. So I am definitely one that want to fight this all the way, destroy these myths. It does not lower the standards. You have to be qualified. I can't say I'm Black, so I want to be a surgeon.
Yes.
No, I have to be a surgeon qualified.
Yes.
And I can't be excluded because I'm Black. And those are the things that we have to make sure that it gets to the forefront. And prayerfully today, and I'm going to be using prayerfully because I am a pastor. Like you said, you automatically start that way. So you're going to hear that language throughout my conversation. But I believe with my heart that we can make people aware, and there's more people that want truth and they want to be able to think it through and make their own decision than there are blind followers.
Well, you know, and you just brought up when you talk about prayerfully. Now, you both, I know you're a very powerful minister at Fellowship Chapel under the auspices of the Dr. Reverend Wendell Anthony. And I know you are a minister at your church out in Inkster under the auspices of Mac Hall.
Yes.
How do you pretty much like kind of keep and lift up the spirits of people in your churches that may be worried about whether or not if they're going to lose their jobs, lose their occupations, or whatever the case may be with DEI? And I'll ask you that first, Ashley, since I know your church is a mega church. But
and what I would say is that I've been in that church since I was 7 years old, and so
Wow.
activism is part and parcel to who I am and who I've been raised to be. And I don't see the fight and the movement exclusive from the Bible. And I think a lot of times there's a misconception with that. Whether you talk about the Exodus with Moses or you talk about Jesus flipping tables, at the end of the day, what we know is that God is always on the side of the oppressed. And I'm honored to be a minister in discernment, a candidate in discernment to become a minister.
Praise God.
And at that church specifically, because it also disrupts a lot of the hierarchy, because we have female ministers. Not every church has female ministers, but to answer your question, as it pertains to giving people hope and to give them to give them faith in the face of adversity, the way that we do it is the way we've always done it. I think that sometimes we might believe, right? Even black people themselves, when you see or realize a black male president, or in having a vice presidential candidate at the Democratic level for president, you know, for the first time in its history, is another huge. I mean, that was huge, right? But the reality of it is that our story and our struggle throughout the history of America has been that we have always had to have hope.
Yes.
That we have always had to rely and understand that our very way of being was created in God's image, such that even though you might oppress me, even though you might try to prevent me from literacy, from being able to vote, all of the struggles that we have been through, and even now they're trying to now relegate us away from positions of structural power, because that's really what this is about.
Right.
And they're trying to do that, and it's oftentimes that this is a good moment that we can look back on the struggles of our history. And that's the reason why I believe that they want to get rid of all the books and things like that, because black people specifically in America are what I would consider to be an anomaly, because we decided to say and command that Constitution actually applied to us. Right. That you can't say that I'm 3/5 of a man, and you can't say that it doesn't apply to men and women. We challenged the Constitution such that we were fighting for a democracy that we weren't even created to be a part of in its origination stage. So when they created the Constitution, they weren't thinking about black people. In fact, they again considered us property. But now we're here again fighting for democracy despite the fact that we know that it wasn't created for us. Yes. And that's the marvel, I think, of black people, and the hope, and it gives you a concept that's greater than yourself. Yes. And that's what I think, because we went to an NAACP meeting last night, and I know I'm just talking, but one of the beauties that I saw was that we started talking about immigration and those who are, not natural born citizens. And that's, again, the beauty of black people. We're going to bring everybody up with us. It's not just about this person or that group or this group. It's anytime we see a group being oppressed, we are going to advocate on their behalf.
Wonderful. You're actually bringing tears to my eyes. When you think about building a country and our backbones with no pay, with never an apology. Right? Yep. When I think about reparations, there's never been a time that they reconciled any of this harm.
Yes.
As we say, we receive this Black History Month.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But to know that as a pastor of outreach at my church, everything that I do is to reach outside of the building and to make sure that people understand that there's a great God that loves them all, but also that he cares about social justice.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. That's the part that I love Dr. John Duckworth in Westland. There's never a sermon where he doesn't incorporate social justice, because that was really Jesus' big picture, right? He said, when you do for the least of them, you've done for God himself. It can't get better than that for a believer. So we're going to do for the least of them. We're going to fight hard. But as the state religious affairs chair with our president, Yvonne White, I make this statement that, as you said, the NAACP has always been at the forefront, strategically figuring out whether it's Thurgood Marshall, it doesn't matter. No, think about us for real.
Yeah.
And I've been watching on Detroit Public Television all the things happening with our story, to know that we built everything for you, but we were caught in plantations and in shacks, and that we lived there and you didn't want us to read, but out of that we had doctors and lawyers during the same time. Like, how did Frederick Douglass do that? We're hanging on the trees, we're hanging on poles, but at the same time this brother is doing this. So that's really telling you about the resilience of us as a people, but at the same time it tells you why we're such a threat. But what we want people to understand is we're not a threat. We understand the power of being inclusive, because we know what we were able to do with little. Now imagine us as a people, and not just people of African descent, but all humanity, what we could bring to the table once we begin to honor who we are. That's what diversity, equity, and inclusion is telling us. Like, there's colors, that's beautiful, but when they get with other things and you get to see the quilt, there's no comparison. So we've got to be able to get people to understand. Open up your understanding, open up your heart, and let's see what we can look like as humanity. And that is our story from the state level for faith, because that's what I'm trying to drive across the state of Michigan with everyone I talk to, with everyone that we have the opportunity to share information on diversity, equity, and inclusion. On this week, we actually had municipalities from across the state, and Pasquale will be on later to talk about that. But you can see the nervousness, you can see the tension. I was in my board meeting this morning, and people are tense. We had information where right now, make sure all of your I-9s are correct, because ICE is coming in. And your people have to have both pieces of documentation. They need to know what to do when people are trying to stop them. And these things are happening, and he's just throwing one thing at you, right? As soon as you get up from one thing, there's another. How do you prepare not only your church, but everyone that you touch? We pass out food weekly. The people that's driving the food from Gleaners are afraid because their ethnicity, right?
And some people
They're
are still,
afraid.
and some people are using the church as a place of refuge.
Yes.
And that's what you're seeing now. There are churches that will not give up
Yes.
that individual when ICE or some other, law enforcement agency comes
Yes.
to go and take them, away.
Yes.
And that's the one good thing, like when you talk about, churches, synagogues, that they are places of refuge for the oppressed. And the one thing that I'm listening to, and I heard you when you made mention about the fact that it was putting tears in your eyes when you
Yeah.
were listening to Ashley, and I'm saying to myself, it's like, it didn't put the tears in my eyes when I was listening to you, Ashley, but it had a sense of pride,
Yes.
because I'm looking at this is our legacy.
Yes. I'm so proud
And
of her.
that's the
Yes.
thing that makes it real
Yes.
good, when we see the legacy and we see our generation left in some great hands.
Yes.
And the one thing that I'm hearing, just like with you, and I'm going to give you a little shout out, like if you want to hear more of Ashley Lewis, go to Fellowship Chapel. I know it's on Outer Drive, but you probably got the address. But then, Pastor, now you, the same thing, when you look in terms of, say, at what you do out in Inkster, which Christ's Temple of Refuge, talk about in terms of, say, are there a lot of the seniors, are they concerned? And then also, less than these few minutes we got left, the difference between the seniors and the youth, or the younger generations. Are the younger generation worried about DE&I, or is it more so with the seniors? Because when I see people being taken, like with ICE, I'm not seeing the young people. I'm seeing the older people being taken, and put in handcuffs and put into the back of a police car, or, detained, as far as, say, in a van or something like that. But what do you think in terms of, say, when you see the seniors versus the young people?
So two things there, Darwin. The one thing you just said, you see adults being put in the vehicles, but the children are where?
Still at home.
Right. So we're talking the foster care system,
Right.
and just being thrown into CPS.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the conversation we had this morning, they were talking about the students that are not in attendance at school at all. Right. They're just not going. They're afraid. They're watching their friends being taken. And we were talking about areas like Southwest, Dearborn Heights, some of Hamtramck, because what we fail to realize is they are very specific in their targeting of certain people. They're not looking for European immigrants that their green card has been expired.
Right.
They're very intentional with this. And that's why diversity, equity, and inclusion has to be a part of the fabric of the way we do things in the state of Michigan. And I just want our governor, I want all of our leadership to say, absolutely not. I need everyone to take a strong stance. This needs to be something that we do across the board. Don't just come to me for photo ops and come to me to vote. Come to me when I need you most. And we
Right.
need every single one of our Democratic and Republican leaders to stand up and say, we are a diversified state. We are equitable in the way we treat one another, our taxpayers in particular, and those that will pay taxes later, since they're so concerned with our economic state. And then we're inclusive. So no, I don't want you to be in Dearborn Heights ICE. I want you to look at data and really do the work.
Okay, we got to take a break.
Oh, wow,
I
that's
know when I
fast.
have when I have ministers up here, I know it's kind of difficult sometimes to kind of, to kind of when they get on the roll. But you are watching Truth to Power. I'm your host, Darwin Griffin. I'm with Pastor Velma Overman. I'm also with Ashley Lewis. So we'll be right back once we take a commercial break.
Justice for Mario Willis. Truth. Facts. Evidence. Mattered. Log into justiceformariowillis.com. Read for yourself.
Have you ever wanted your own TV show? Have you dreamed of showcasing your talent for the world to see? Well, now you can. Have your own TV show. You can have your own 30-minute show. Not only will you be seen in the Detroit area, but you can be viewed worldwide. For more information, call 313-868-6612. Visit our studios and receive a free TV interview to promote your business, church, or organization by appointment only.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. Are you living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, or maybe you know someone who's in the same situation? The probate process may be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. We have several nonprofit partners who have free attorneys who can assist you. Contact our office, 313-224-5990, or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. Don't lose your family property. Some of these properties have been in the family for 4 or 5 generations. Contact us now. We're here to help.
To the I Love the Hustle show, Saturday afternoons at 12 p.m., followed by Mr. Smooth's Ballroom and Steppers Express Dance Show on WHPR 15.2 Detroit, Apple TV, Roku, and many streaming platforms. See you Saturday.
Special edition of Truth to Power. I'm your host. And as you see, we are joined now by another powerful African-American female up here. And what I'm going to do, too, is the same thing I did before, where I had Pastor Overman to introduce Ashley. Ashley, now the ball is in your court. I'm going to let you introduce our other very, very special guest that's right here in between us.
Okay. Thank you so much, Brother Darwin. And I do have the honor of introducing her. And one of the things that I want to say before giving her accolades, one of the things she's done for me, especially as a young leader, is to give me confirmation, affirmation, and support, which is something that we don't talk enough about with women in leadership. But I'm really grateful for her first in that. And that way of being that she has. But Director LaShawn English, who's not only the director of the UAW Region 1, but she's also the director of the International Women's Department, which covers the entire United States, Puerto Rico, and Canada. And the things that I love to say about her, because she would not say it, but I would say it for her, is that she's a skilled trades person holding 2 journey persons cards, and she was in another union before becoming a part of the UAW, and her trajectory in the UAW spans over 22 years, and she started off literally in election committee, so she started out ground level, and then became a part of her executive board by being recording secretary for 3 terms, but then a 3-term president, and really was a representative for everyone. And I always say that you talk about DE&I, she was a champion for the people, and the people she represented didn't necessarily look like her, but she always championed their interests. And it's no different with her as the now regional director and now also director of the women's department. Her leadership exudes her experience, whether it be through skilled trades or also as a leader at the local union level and now at the regional level. She has used all of those experiences to really, really amplify the needs of all working people. And so without further ado, I just wanted to give her just a huge shout out, because I really think the world of her, and it really, she doesn't understand how much for me she's been just a blessing, and also for the women all across the UAW.
How does it make you feel, LaShawn, when you hear these powerful words being spoken by our younger generation?
It makes me feel real good.
I mean, I can hear you getting speechless now, and I'm hearing you ready to clear your throat. But go ahead.
You know, it really lets you know, because I'm older than what I look. But and I always wish I had someone to do that for me. But to hear someone actually say it to me, them knowing me that everything that I believed in, that I've got someone coming behind me that's gonna take care of it once when I'm no longer here. So our job, whoever, it doesn't matter who you are, to leave the world better than what you found.
Absolutely.
And if you haven't, then there's a problem. And with people like Ashley and all the women that we meet, that's what I'm hoping to do. Is one person, each person, doesn't matter if you're male, female, white, black, it doesn't matter. Our job is to make everything better for the next person, and not to keep fighting the same battles. I mean, to go backwards is just it's just crazy to me. But we need to go forward. As it was stated, me being in these different positions, I'll say construction actually kind of was my first real issue, it was affirmative action at the same time then. But to get in skilled trades, you got to have the skills. It may have gotten me in the door at the time to be skilled trades on outside construction, but I growed. And each time, my experience took me to the next step. And I ran jobs on the outside where there was no women running jobs as an apprentice. So then when I went to the big 3, it's like experience. I never really looked at it as my color. And like you said, most of us black people, we know we have to work 3 times, 4 times. We know we qualify because we were born told this. It's like from the moment you was little, you were always told you have to be better than this person. You have to be better. Our parents inbred us. It's like never just take something for granted. And when I hear that, I'm thinking like not one black child that I ever grew up was told like just be okay and accept someone. Just say come in the door. No. We're told from the moment, do it better, redo it over, do it now. So every time I went a step up in any position that I was in, and a lot of first when I became the first woman of color as the president at the local union, it was like I didn't want that title. I wanted to be a president who did good. I was like, look, don't label me as the first woman or the first person of color. I hope that what I done and what I leave done something for everyone. So that means that when we have programs like DEI, you're picking a qualified person, not based on because my color or how I look.
Or to fill a quota or something like that.
And cause trust me, in construction, that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, so many people do not believe that when you're in construction, they will only hire, and I'm going to say this even for skilled trades in the big 3, we were 10% of the number. It was never if you thought that you were going to go over that number, the company or the job will make sure we were not going over that 10%. And in construction, what was crazy is like because of affirmative action, companies will, and they'll claim that it was owned by a woman or a minority so they can get that contract. But on top of that, if they hire a black person, they get to keep them on their books. And then me being a woman, they got more. It was like I was considered 3 instead of 1. So then people were like, what does that mean? It's like, well, a black man is 1, white woman is 1, but if you get a black woman on the job, so you got 3. They call it a 3. It was like a rule of 3. So you can show the federal government you had 3 minorities on your roll.
Yeah, because that's what they were saying. Because I think when doing some of the HR that I've done in the past, they were talking about looking at a female being a double minority,
Yes.
not just the minority.
Yes.
So that made a big difference, you know, right there when you want to hire, and especially when you look at the tax breaks at being a double minority as opposed to just being like myself, being a minority.
Correct.
So there's a big difference right there. But let's talk a little bit about with UAW, with labor. How is diversity, equity, and inclusion? How are your ranks, the people in your positions, the people that are under your direction, under your leadership, how are they affected?
So one thing about the UAW, we always have been in the front for diversity. That's one thing about the UAW. I can't say that a lot of rules and things that have been made because of unions. You know, we always believe skilled trades at one time had to be broken because black people wanted to get in there. The union fought to get there with the company. Women in positions of power, the union fought for it. So I could say for the UAW, we always been that person. We don't need somebody to tell us we need a DEI program because we always fought for it. We always made sure our board looked like that at one time. We always make sure like our positions of power, we continue to fight for that. That's why we have a women's department. That's why we had a civil rights department. These departments to keep us on task and making sure we do the right thing. And one thing about being in a union, it wants to look like the rest of the world. We believe everyone has a shot. That's the best thing about a union. It's not just individualized. It doesn't just belong to one group of people. It belongs to everybody.
Now, Ashley, you're the women's division. What do you do in the women's division? And I guess I'm just wondering too, because it's like, is there a men's division as well?
Yeah, the men's division is the whole institution. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, but that's what I was. I was just curious about that because you hear so much about women,
Yeah.
and not hearing it, you know, as much about the men. But go ahead. What do you do in that capacity?
If you go into the history of labor, it was very exclusive. So it was exclusive based upon race, but also gender. And so the International UAW was very strategic in making sure that women were involved. And it began in terms of the women's department on the war board. So, you know, we talk about Rosie the Riveter. Well, Rosie the Riveter was birthed out of like UAW women who were also going to go build the tanks and all of the bombers, et cetera, that were being built while the men were away. And they were also strategic in making sure that women stayed and remained in the workplace, because there was even letters from our previous president, Walter Reuther, that said that they could not violate their seniority once the men came home. The men who were in the positions of power were trying to send the women back home and saying they should go back and be homemakers. And so what I will say is that the mission of the women's department is to work to alleviate the inequities that are created by race and gender, not only in the workplace, but then also in broader society. And so what most people don't conceptualize is that we're not just for women. In fact, I would say we're for all of working families, because we bring forth the issues that prevent people from staying and remaining in the workplace as it relates to care or as it relates to their gender in general, because what we saw first was that they came after women. We had the fall of Roe v. Wade, and now they're starting to take away or creating gerrymandering and voting rights, and now they're coming after DE&I. And so that was literally the beginning. They came after women. And historically, that's always been the case. And so that's the reason why the UAW is unique in that we have separate departments. We don't have just, in other unions, they have women's and civil and human rights. They have it all bunched together. But what we know is that the very nature of our ability to reproduce has become such an issue within labor, not only in terms of our work, but also our ability to even thrive, right? We know that Black women historically into present day actually are more apt to die trying to give birth. And it has nothing to do with our genetic makeup. It has everything to do with bias. And an inability for them to understand what women need. When you see people like Serena Williams, who had to advocate for herself, and she could have died because when she was advocating, the person who was caring for her wanted to make it seem like it was okay for her to suffer and that she didn't know what she was talking about or what she was experiencing in her body. And so that's really been the history of the women's department. And we've also been central to diversity, equity, and inclusion, because a lot of our first international servicing representatives, a lot of our first in general came through the women's department and the work of the women's department.
So now, when we talk about the women and the separation between the women and the men that work, in the plants, in the factories, is there a bias in terms of, say, with what the women do versus what the men do, or, because there's probably, is that a myth? Is that a misconception? Because sometimes you have the men that may think that a woman can't do the same kind of work in the factories or in the plants. Is that true still today?
I think it changed a lot because, again, we have more women now that are in skilled trades. We have more women that are doing jobs that are not normally right on the line anymore.
That are non-traditional.
Non-traditional.
Okay.
I would say when I first got there, women would be scared. They wouldn't want to group out of being on the line. These women now are willing to try. And they're going different areas. And the men are helping. I mean, we have a lot of men who are journeymen who have women that are their apprentice, and they're helping them. I think it was a time, but not now. I think it's just more of us getting out our way and realize that we can do it. And men are realize that women have the ability to do it too.
Now, one thing, because I like to kind of educate, the few people that might need to know something that my guests are saying. Explain the differences between like apprentice and journeyman, so that the few people that may never have ever worked in a plant before, in a factory or something like that. Can you explain that? Either one of you can take that.
So, apprentice is someone that's learning to be a job, so going to be a journeyman. So, apprentice, you go to school, where you go to school so many hours, and you work on a job so many hours. And it usually take up to 5 years or 4 to 5 years to become an expert like a journeyman. So, one thing I say about between journeyman and apprentice is like a doctor. You're going to school. So, apprentice, you're going to school to learn your trade. So, you're just apprentice of the trade that you're learning. And then the journeyman means you became the expert at your trade. And you got to go take tests. You got to go get your license, state license. So it's a lot involved, yes. So that's the difference.
So was there anything, and I'm going to ask you this too, LaShawn, was there something in terms of, say, now that you're in this position? What are some of the things, because I hear a lot of great things about you in this position. I hear a lot of people that say, I love to work for LaShawn English. They say that. And I've had so many people tell about where, because I know there's the separation. I know we've got Laura Dickerson in Region 1A. When you say regions, in terms of, say, what are the separations of regions throughout? I knew Jill Kareem had, a region, but what does your region encompass as far as, say, like the cities, townships, that Region 1 encompasses?
So we got 8 counties.
Okay.
I go all the way up to Oakland County. I have Canada. I have, I got a lot. So it's 8 counties within that area there. So me and Laura does share Region 1A. We share Detroit, the city of Detroit. So I have the east side, she has the west side. So go down Woodward, she has one side, I have another. So all that encompasses, I have 100,000 people that I represent within.
I'm sorry, say it again.
100,000. That's just Region 1. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. I'm the biggest region in Michigan also.
Is Region 1.
Region 1 is the biggest, yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And Ashley, I know you were telling in your introduction to Laura, I'm sorry, in terms of with Ashley, you were talking about with LaShawn and how her leadership has really kind of impressed and empowered you. But with your women's group, do you tend to kind of go and, like, when she said Canada, I'm like, is that where you also work with women in Canada as well that don't look like us? So how do they feel in terms of, say, where you have the Canadians, now you've got the Americans, and now there's talk about annexing Canada onto and making Canada be a 51st state, with what President Trump is saying to do now. But how do you see the differences in terms, say, when you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, when you look at Canada and then you're looking at the United States? Is there that diversity between those?
I think you have to start with our Constitution. We don't see separation. And that's the
Okay.
beauty of labor, is that even when we were talking about men and women, it's like, no, actually we understand that we have to be in this fight together, because if we're not, then we're going to lose the fight, right? And so what I would say is that what we know is that in our Constitution, we don't separate by national origin. We don't separate by race, gender. We literally come together and unite to advocate for dignity and respect for workers everywhere, whether it be in Puerto Rico or Canada.
Okay.
And so we don't necessarily draw those distinctions. I think that it's a natural view of capitalism, which has nothing to do with the UAW. But I think it's always it is a view of capitalism, though, to think of everything as this or that instead of all of us in this together. And I think that's the beauty of the UAW, is that we consider everything together, and we don't just stand up for ourselves or for America or for an auto worker. We're standing up for healthcare workers and grad students, for any worker who's looking for dignity and respect in the workplace. And one of the things that I thought was interesting too that arose in this conversation is that people don't realize that the diversity in skilled trades was built out of collective bargaining language. And so it is our language that actually becomes a benchmark for legislation, and people don't realize that. And even though we're talking about President Trump, let's be clear. He is our president that's elected to serve us, and we have to maintain that power and that distinction. And one of the things that we know about the UAW, they were there when Martin Luther King first wrote his "I Have a Dream" speech. He wrote it at Solid House. And so we've always, that speaking truth to power is in our bloodline. And so it's our job to advocate on behalf of the dignity and respect of workers, not only in the United States, but Canada as well, and Puerto Rico, because their interests are our interests too, even as Americans, because we're in a global economy. Whether we want to talk about it or not, we are. We're in a global economy. And when you look at President Fain and even the things that he's doing, talking about global solidarity, all of us striking at one time, because they try to pit Mexico against Canada and Puerto Rico and Europe. And it's like, no, it's all the same 8 players or something that I think that all own the wealth in America. And what we have to show is that we're willing to get beyond our differences and understand that we got to do this work together, or we're not gonna win the fight. We're not gonna get dignity and respect in the workplace.
But I want to add to that. She's right. So also currently I'm on the global. So it's industrial, which consists of global. So it consists of all the unions globally that me and the President Sean Fain on. And that's what she's meaning. Like, we care about all workers. We care about everybody. Like I said, there's no distinct. I mean, there's no difference. No matter where you're from, as a UAW or a union, our job is to represent everyone and to make sure this world is better. And I actually stated it best. We have been through so many presidents, let's be honest. Whoever the president is at the end of the day, it's up to the people. And it's up to the people to continue to fight and continue to fight. As things change, we are very diverse. We can change as it needs to be. But our job as a union is to put things, collective bargaining, put it on the table, put it in language. That's something, so, a president can change certain things, but having a union and having actual language, then the company has to follow those language. It doesn't matter if 1 billion people just one person has all the wealth. If he has a union, there's a reason people keep union out of their building, because they don't want to give the people that work there the right to make decisions on their job.
That's why you're the director, because that was going to be my next question to you. Because I was getting ready to go, and people that don't feel like unions need to be in their companies or their plants, why then is it important to have a union?
It's so important. I wouldn't work a job without a union. I mean, I'm going to kid you not. Because the union actually give you a voice. First off, let's start about this. Most people don't realize. Say if you're management and you don't have a union, every day the rules can change. And most people don't want it. They want to come to work and be able to work and do a good job. 90% of your employees want to do a good job. And they just want to know what they're getting. One thing about a union, you don't have to guess. You don't have to be the prettiest woman in the room. You don't have to go over here to be the tallest or, or be in the boys
So
club.
that's where that equity comes in.
That's where that equity comes
Okay,
in. Like
okay.
they can't come in there and say, "Hey, we got rules to how you get moved up in the union." You can't just go on a job and say, "Hey, that's Ashley's my best friend. Can I get?" No. The union has rules, and it's voted on by the membership. There's rules that's voted on the membership. You get to come to work, and you know what you can expect from your job. Not be based on if the boss had a bad day. The boss decided that a person named LaShawn he was with last night he didn't like. So guess what? When LaShawn get to work, she's not knowing why she's having a hard time. That eliminates all that. It eliminates all the stuff, all the noise above. It eliminates that. Having a union. You don't have to go talk to your friend like, how do I get myself out of trouble? No, you got a union. Someone's going to help you. Educate yourself. A union is where you want to be. And as Ashley stated, for people that look like me and Ashley, because of a union, we're allowed to get and move how we have. I wouldn't be in a position if I was as the director or a president, because it taught the people that work with me that obviously it wasn't about my color or my skin. It was because I was doing my job. And not only did they elect me once, they elected me twice, they elected me 3 times, and they continue to promote me again by making me a regional director. And this is not, the union doesn't look majority like me and Ashley.
Right.
So people need to know that it doesn't look like me or her. It actually looks just like the president right now. So that lets me know that people believe if you're doing your job and you qualify, yes.
In the minute that we have left before we take this next break, I'll let you close the segment out, LaShawn, and just basically, what do you say to young women that may be in a position where they're wondering, like, okay, can I do like what LaShawn English did to ascend to the position that she's in? What encouraging words would you give to them?
First of all, get a mentor. Get someone you can talk to. Doesn't matter if it's a male or female. Get a mentor. That's first off.
Who mentored you?
I had a couple of people, but Wanda Butler. She was one of my great mentors. I love her to death. Actually, I love her to death because she actually saw something in me that others didn't see in me. I always knew I wanted to do certain things and I always wanted to help, but she actually focused it in how does it look. And having someone that's a mentor or a sponsor, they can show you what it looks like. Because the jobs are not easy. So you want to hear the good and the bad about it. And that helps you. And then educate yourself. Educate yourself on what it means to help other people. Know the organization, know what you're running for, know understanding. And one of the biggest things I tell women that's coming into this position, don't believe what people say. Search for the right answers. And don't always run for positions that you see women in. I truly believe that one thing about the union, I will totally say this, every position belongs to everyone. So as a woman, don't be scared to run for what you feel that you're qualified for. Just don't be scared. Just put yourself out. If you really want to, put yourself out there.
Well, and that's the thing that I think those are some great words to close this segment, on. I can probably take a point of privilege and give you like 30 seconds really to kind of say, if somebody wants to get in touch with you about more information about the unions, about UAW, about Region 1, do you have a contact or is there a website that they can go on to get more information?
So we do. So first I want to start off, if you are a woman and you are UAW, doesn't matter. We do have a class for the women's department that we're having at Pat Gray House. That's going to be Illinois. So please go to Women's UAW on Facebook and you can download the application to go to that because that is going to be a great start. Our job as the women's department, and it ain't just for women, but it's for women and men. We want to make sure you're very knowledgeable. Then also for Region 1, you can go to UAW Region 1 Facebook page or also to our website, which is the same thing, UAW Region 1, and get information from there. I would say one last thing I would say though. Ashley, we have the UAW Women's website. That's on our UAW.org, right, Ashley? Mm-hmm. And you can put in questions and put in comments and want to be mentor. We actually have a mentor program that the women's department is doing. Not saying it got to be just women if men want to be mentor. So we're doing the work. So if you want to be mentor, we're here and available for you. If you want to know what it means to be, organize your women's department or have issues on your job, Ashley and the women's department have created all this on the UAWwomen's.org. Is that right, Ashley?
Yep, UAW.org/women. Yep. And if you Google it, it'll pop right up. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a plum-pleasing pleasure to have you, LaShawn English, Director Region 1, on the show with us. And we definitely want to extend an invitation for you to come back as often as you'd like. Ashley, you're going to be in the last segment, so we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to be coming back with C. Pascal Easy, the Director of DEI in this great city of Westland, as well as with Pastor Oldham. We'll take a break, and we'll be right back.
WGPR Detroit HD2.
You're watching WHPS, Highland Park, Detroit.
Cold-Tech Appliance Sales and Service, 7441 East 7 Mile Road. Over 20 years experience. We repair air conditioners, washers, dryers, ranges, refrigerators. We sell a full line of reconditioned appliances. We service most major brands. We also feature a senior citizen discount. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. For more information, call 313-891-4900. Cold-Tech.
Watkins Broadcasting is going worldwide. Now you can watch Detroit's own WHPR on your TV from anywhere in the world. No matter where you are, you can stay in the know with WHPR TV and Roku. You can get your easy-to-install Roku box from wherever you shop for your entertainment gear. Once your Roku box is connected to your TV and internet, go to the channel store on the home menu of the Roku box. Enter WHPR TV in the search engine and add it to your channels. That's it. That's all you need to get the best in entertainment, news, and talk, no matter where you are. Roku brings all of your favorites to your TV. Netflix, Hulu Plus, Crackle, HBO Go, and now WHPR TV, Detroit Live.
Muscles, joints, or feet tired, achy, or distressed? Tried everything? Ringmaster Rubbing Oil is a vintage topical pain reliever, trusted for over 70 years, with a rich formula for the treatment of stubborn aches and pains. Packaged in a glass bottle for purity, our liquid can also be used in warm water for foot soaks and compresses. A little goes a long way. Try our time-tested formula, available in several sizes.
Make a donation to WHPR TV and receive two 2-ounce bottles of Ringmaster Rubbing Oil for $25. Call 313-868-6612.
Tune in to the I Love the Hustle show, Saturday afternoons at 12 p.m., followed by Mr. Smooth's Ballroom and Steppers Express Dance Show on WHPR 15.2 Detroit, Apple TV, Roku, and many streaming platforms. See you Saturday.
host, Darwin Griffin, and we are also joined again by Pastor Velma Jean Overman. And as I've been doing, I've been passing the baton on to the person that is pretty much kind of like assisting me with introducing the next very, very special guest. So, Pastor Overman, I'm going to do you the pleasure to get a chance to go and introduce C. Pascal Easy.
So thank you so much, Mr. Griffin. It is my honor, and I was going to just do like a brief introduction, but I think it is only fair when a man has worked so hard in this country and has done so much that I at least acknowledge who we're talking to and the experience and the expertise that you bring to this conversation. So Pascal, as you said, he is the Chief Diversity Officer for the City of Westland, one of the larger communities in Wayne County. He's also the disability advocate, award-winning change maker, intercultural strategist, an impactful mentor. He has been a nonprofit board chair and an editor. So he is the man for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it is my honor to introduce him to your listening and viewing audience.
And I'm going to go and do this little power privilege because of this title, being Truth to Power. You wear the insignia, the logo, the emblem of NAACP. And myself, Pastor Overman, we had a labor and community luncheon back in October, right before our Freedom Fund dinner. And we were giving recognition to 3 people. And the person that received the Community Impact Award was none other than our special guest.
Yes.
Thank you.
Talk about in terms of, say, just when we gave you that award, when Pastor Overman bestowed that award upon you, how did you feel?
I really felt honored that you would consider me worthy of such a recognition. And I felt it was a pat on my back. It was a way of saying, we see you, we appreciate what you're doing, and we want you to continue on that path. So it was a morale boost for me, and I can't say it enough that I appreciate the work that NAACP does. I'm a member of NAACP. I'm a lifetime member.
Thank you.
And I
Western
commend,
Wayne County NAACP?
Yes. And I commend your leadership in NAACP. We look up to people like you. We draw our inspiration from your leadership. Like I said on that day, Pastor Overman is somebody I call with frequency. I call her a lot, and I email, and there's never been any request, any demand that I placed on her for support that she did not rise up to. She will always, say, "I'm here. I'm willing. I'm ready to support your work at the City of Westland." And of course, that the City of Westland created the DEI Commission.
When was that created?
2020. And in 2022, the department was created. And a lot of it had to do with the leadership of Western Wayne and AACP. So we credit that development, the wonderful thing that the commission represents and the department has done in the City of Westland. We credit a lot to the initiative, the leadership, the perseverance of Western Wayne NAACP to say the city should take the lead. And it's a thing of pride to the City of Westland that we are one of the few cities in the state that has a full-fledged department of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I have the pleasure of serving as the city's first chief diversity officer.
How did that feel, being the first? I mean, you're just like we've had innovations, with Ashley, with LaShawn, with Pastor Overman. How does that feel for you to have been the first? And do you feel like the pressure is on in terms of, say, about what you have to do to leave the legacy for the people that ascend in this position after you?
Certainly. It's a huge responsibility. First, yes, the title good, but there's a lot running on that title. If you are called upon to chart the way forward, I had to create a department from scratch. I had to work with stakeholders, work with people who really wanted to make a difference in the community to get it started. Gratefully, I had a lot of support, a lot of leaders, black and white, brown, who said, Pascal, we will support you. So, and I approach DEI from that perspective. I lean on those people. My colleague in the department, she knows very well, is white. She's been to a number of our events. We always bring in, we always make it multicultural, we always make it multiracial. If you come to our event, like we hosted an event a few days ago, and people were watching us where I was sandwiched. There was a white lady was here, and a white guy was here in wheelchair, and I introduced him as somebody who moderated our health equity event in October. So what we've done is to build a coalition of people who believed in doing the right thing and doing the right things right, and that's why we're still going full speed with our, despite the pressure, despite all the controversy, the anti-DEI movement that has gone full speed. We still have people, and I can tell you this, I do have people from across the ideological aisle, from all walks of life, coming to me and offering suggestions and offering their goodwill, offering their support. Privately, they may publicly be against DEI per se, but they tell me, Pascal, we see your, we work with you, we know who you are, we know what you want to accomplish, we know you want to build the community. In fact, what I call my events, my programs, I put them under the framework of community building. And you can't build a community that is diverse without bringing everyone to the table. So I've always tried to bring people to the table, irrespective of their background, irrespective of their lived experience, irrespective of their economic status. Just make it that way. It's not easy. It's a tough call, but we don't, of course, lose sight of the fact of the moral responsibility that we have to take care of the least amongst us, the least of these, those who are suffering in different ways. Single moms who are battling with the decision: do I go to work? If I go to work, how do I take care of my kids? If I don't work for 12 hours, I may not be able to pay my bills. Now, I need childcare for my child. Right. So there are we have persons with disability who, if they don't have Nankin Transit, I mentioned it, and she championed. I was so pleased that she really expatiated on that. We have people who, but for the services of Nankin Transit, they will not be able to, seniors and persons living with disability, they will not be able to go to work. They will not be able to meet so many demands on them. And so when people go full throttle against DEI, I sometimes I think it's probably because they may not have a full grasp of what DEI represents, what it really means. I believe that DEI is a moral and legal demand on the conscience and character of America.
That's good.
Moral because it's the right thing. Legal because there are laws in this country that forbid discrimination on the basis of race, color, gender, national origin, sex.
Ability.
Actually, the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the Title VII, forbids employment discrimination on the basis of race, color, gender, national origin, and religion. And the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission was created to enforce Title VII. I believe that DEI is a response to the ineffectiveness of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission to fully enforce discrimination. So people, look, I'm part of society. I want to contribute my utmost to society. I want to get the best benefit for being a member of the society. That's what this is about. And so I have been asked 1,000 times about the future of DEI. I have received, in fact, there are researchers that a lot of universities have come in. I have a 30-minute research interview by a university professor in Kansas. A lot of work is going on right now. People are trying to gain a better understanding of why there's this response and all that. Now, I believe that as an acronym, DEI may be battered, may be buried, but as a pact with reason and empathy and compassion, DEI will endure. At its core, DEI is all about loving our neighbors as we love ourselves. That's the rudiment of it. That's where and when I go to conferences and I try as much as possible to simplify understanding of DEI, because I think there is basic misunderstanding, and people run with and say DEI bad. And, okay, what does it mean? How is it bad? How does it impede your progress? How does it negatively affect you? Why are you so riled up against it? And sometimes they don't really have a full grasp of it. But I also have to say this, and this is very important, and I believe in different shades of opinion. Diversity of thought also allows, it makes room for people to disagree with me about the benefits, about the relevance, about the importance of DEI. So that's why I'm not too, if somebody says, "Oh, this is terrible," this is what's okay, that's your view, and you're entitled to your view. You're entitled to support a movement that is against something that benefits a large number of people. And just as SNAP, just as food stamps, there was this, dominant narrative, which was wrong, factually wrong, that it was all about black people. No, black people are not the majority of recipients of SNAP, of food stamps. The same thing applies to DEI. It's been sold and promoted as something that is exclusively to the benefit of black people. But data suggests from U.S. Department of Labor that black people are not the primary beneficiary of DEI. And we were at this event, and Bankole really, I like the way he framed it. He said, we are supposed to be firemen and firewomen. Yes. But beyond that, we are supposed to be salesmen and saleswomen. So we need to put on our salesmanship cap to really help people understand not only what it means, but also the impact it has made. The impact it has made. Our events, we do a lot of projects in Westland. And at the end of every event, we administer surveys, anonymous surveys, and people give us kudos for what we're doing. They tell us, "Hey, this is great," and they're not just black. Right. They are, people from different races, people from different backgrounds, telling us, "Hey, we see what you guys are doing. We appreciate what you're doing. We encourage what you're doing." So I think if more work is done to present not just definitions, because I care less honestly about those definitions. At the core of most of us in America, is kind disposition toward people around us, toward our neighbors. Not everyone has that, but I live amongst wonderful neighbors who are not black, they're white, they're good to me. I have lived in different places around the world, and from Australia to just name it, and I interact, I work with, I've partnered with, I've mentored people who don't look like me, And I see this common thread of humanity, this common thread of empathy and compassion that I believe finds outlet in DEI. But DEI has received a bad rap because I think we need to do a better job of helping people understand it. I think there's a deficit in understanding, and the onus lies on us. Not to, like somebody framed it that way, and I think that somebody said it's not a retreat, it's a reframing. I think that's what we need to go back to the drawing board and see what did we miss? Have we, because there are people, I talk with them and they just believe that, hey, we've alienated them. This is their perception, this is how they see, they think by you doing this, you are alienating us, you are excluding us. But is that the case? So we need to really understand the basis. What is driving this animosity toward DEI? What is driving it? Who is driving that animosity? How can we correct anything that went wrong? And how can we build community with the understanding that it belongs to the goal, the end goal of DEI is belonging.
Right.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion is about belonging. And so you have people who are they are members. For instance, this is a city. Our city has different sections, has different genders, has different different races, different tribes, and all that. The goal, really, the ultimate goal is belonging to that entity, that project called Westland. That's the goal. Now, these are all ways to make people feel a sense of connection, emotional connection, economic connection to that project called Westland. Now, I tell people, and I believe it very strongly, if you miss the mark on the D, it's an acronym, DEI. Many a time people miss the mark on the first letter in the D. If you miss it, it might be difficult for you to really grapple with the E and R.
Because and that's interesting you say that, because I was talking to my brother from another mother, a gentleman named Jim Peterson, yesterday, and he's white. And that's what he was pretty much like alluding to, the same thing. You've got to look at all different letters to be able to go and realize how they all impact one another.
They do. Mm-hmm. They do. And we sometimes, we have all these, all these theories and all this high sounding. And for the average Joe, you bring all this high sounding stuff, he may not, he or she may not connect to that. But I went to a conference, I was one of the speakers, and I just laid it out there. And I said, okay, how many of you here have sold homes? And many hands went up. And I said, okay, how many of you have given sellers concession? Many hands went up. I said, sellers concession, that's equity. You are resisting DEI, but you've given seller's concession to your neighbor, to somebody to buy your home. You've assisted. Without the seller's concession, they may not be able to pay the down payment or the closing cost, but you helped. So you removed a barrier so that this person can become a homeowner. And by homeownership, apart from the emotional, the stability, the emotional connection, deeper connection to the city, it's a way of passing on wealth to the next generation. It helps in the community. And I said, look, you've practiced DEI without knowing it. I talked to mothers. You're a mother. You have a daughter who goes for ballet classes or piano classes, and your daughter has a best friend whose mom works 14 hours a day. Because she works 14 hours a day or 12 hours a day, she's not able to take her daughter to the same ballet class or the same piano class. This woman takes her daughter's best friend every time to the classes. So what's that? DEI. That's DEI. Right. So many people who resist DEI are actually practicing DEI on a daily basis without knowing it. They may be against, they think it's all about racism, they think it's all about, but when you sit down and explain to people the basics, the everyday experience of DEI, they all practice. The people who go against DEI are practicing it. So what I do is when I talk with them, I say, hey, let's forget the acronym, forget what you see on evening news. Let's talk about how we live in this community as neighbors, as friends.
I like that.
And I use simple glaring examples to convince them. To try to convince them. Some people might still not buy it, no matter how you try to buy it, that they are practicing DEI. So I think the job is to do more of removing the myth, the misconceptions around DEI. I think that can help.
Now, in the few minutes we have left with the segment,
Wow, that was fast.
well, it always is when you're having fun, and when you're learning something, when you're getting educated. But I want you, Pascal, to give your contact information. If somebody wants to get more information, they want to get, to kind of glean more information from you, how can they get in contact with you and your division in terms of, say, with your directorship?
Yeah, CEZE@cityofwestland.com. CEZE@cityofwestland.com is my email address. You can also connect with me on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, C Pascal Eze. I love to connect with people. I love to share ideas. I'm not an embodiment of positive ideas. I like to be challenged. I like to talk with people, learn from them. We get better when we talk with people and draw from their experience.
So in the last minute, but I'm gonna let you, if you want to ask Pascal a question first before we have to wrap up.
Okay, well, I did want to ask a question. I want to make sure that your viewing audience knew that as far as municipalities and communities and cities, that he is an expert on how to incorporate this in the way you do your daily workings in your communities. Being a municipality that really have incorporated DE and I at the next level. So he is one of those content experts that we should reach out to throughout Wayne County.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So now, the one thing I want to, is there any misconception that we haven't talked about in this time with Ashley, with LaShawn, or now with Pastor Overman, that you'd like to espouse about or expose in this last minute that we have in the segment?
The misconception about DEI being esoteric, I think if you take it down to pocketbook, checkbook, daily living, it changes the whole narrative.
Right.
DEI is about me having a job. It's about somebody being a job owner, a homeowner. It's about somebody being able to go to college. And I want to briefly, talk about this DEI hire stuff. That everybody, if you're black and you get a job, you're unqualified, and it's because of your race. No, we are qualified. I've met a lot of wonderful people, super qualified people across this country. I think the selling point for those who are anti-DEI is that it promotes mediocrity, and so they've come up with this acronym MEI. They say merit, experience, and intelligence. They've come up with this, MER, and there's another one, of solidarity and all that. So it goes at the heart. It attacks. If somebody sees you're well qualified, you bring a wealth of experience to the job. Somebody says, "Oh, you're there because you're black." It's affirmative action. It's I just think people need to. So if somebody tells me that, I tell them no. I'm qualified. I have a lot of experience. I've worked. I have a wealth of experience. I've practiced. So we should not shy away from letting people understand that we deserve positions that we get. It's even tough. It's tough. It's tough if we earn them. If you know what happens, if you apply for a job, your application goes through ATS, applicant tracking software, that might be programmed in a way that might not give you a chance.
I got you.
Because of your name, because of the school you attended, because of the gap. The gap in your resume because you took a year off to take care of your daughter or your son. there are a lot of things that people, we need to help them understand that's really what we're talking about.
Now, give your contact one more time because I could see people wanting to get you on speaking engagement. So give your contact one more time before we take this break.
CEZE@cityofwestland.com. I am C. Pascal EZ on Facebook and LinkedIn.
As you can see, we appreciate you, and it's been a plum-pleasing pleasure to have you on this show to pretty much like dispel some of the myths about DEI. And we hope that a lot of people gained a lot of information from what you said. So again, thank you for coming on Truth to Power, because you have really brought truth to our power. Thank you again. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to bring back Ashley again for our last segment. So again, you are watching Truth to Power. I'm your host, Darwin Griffin.
Every Monday through Friday from 12 noon to 3 p.m., it's the Tavis Smiley Show on WHPR TV and Radio 15.2. Also seen on Roku, Fire Stick, Apple TV, iPhone, and Android. That's the Tavis Smiley Show on WHPR TV and Radio. Download the WHPR TV app for iOS, Android, and Roku. The Tavis Smiley Show, distributed by R.J. Watkins Studios.
Claudine Jackson thought she had it all until she was faced with the challenges of raising an autistic child. Inspired by autism is her brutally honest journey filled with heartbreak and triumph. Get your copy and find the support you deserve today by visiting www.claudinejackson.tv.
Have you ever wanted your own TV show? Have you dreamed of showcasing your talent for the world to see? Well, now you can. Have your own TV show. You can have your own 30-minute show. Not only will you be seen in the Detroit area, but you can be viewed worldwide. For more information, call 313-868-6612. Visit our studios and receive a free TV interview to promote your business, church, or organization by appointment only.
Reverend Jim Holly's International Ministries introduces 2 new publications. The Spirit Speaks, 365 Days in Quotation of Affirmation, and A Saved City is a Safe City. Resources and Bible classes around the country. Purchase your book today for $14.95 or receive both for only $27.95. Call her right now while supplies last. Reverend Jim Holly, 258 East Milwaukee Street, Box 27, Detroit, Michigan, 48202 or 313-871-2800.
Watkins, our station manager, president, owner, has been calling into the show and letting the guests know we're learning. And hopefully our listening and viewing audience has learned a lot from this segment. So I, again, tip my hat off to both of you for originating in this dialogue so that we could have phenomenal guests like C. Pascal Easy, as well as LaShawn English to be on the show. So let's kind of look at, and it was interesting because I think that as we have been watching, and listening to what everybody's been saying, I know, Ashley, I was looking at you from a distance and I was seeing you kind of like nodding your head with some of the things that Pascal was saying. what are some of the takeaways, and I'll ask you both, what are some of the takeaways that you, Ashley, was getting from the conversation that we were having with Pascal?
What I really got from him was how to actually talk about DE&I from a perspective, for example, like a mother who's working and then the next door neighbor is taking her daughter to, a gymnastics class or wherever she needs to go. That is a different perspective that I haven't heard. And also, he gave a really good conceptualization of merit and that discussion of quote unquote merit and the misconception that's associated with it, while also reminding people that everyone that is actually really being or included in DE&I not only have merit, they often exceed what one considers to be merit. Right. And so those were some of my takeaways. And I even thought about the evolution of DE&I, because being Director English was talking and being in the construction trades, a lot of people don't realize just how challenging that is, especially because it's a male-dominated field. Right. And oftentimes it is white male-dominated. It's one of those that is passed down, and tradespeople make really good money. Absolutely. And I think, too, the one thing that I was really hearing, too, was about economics and access. And I thought that was some of the highlights for me.
And it makes me tend to think about the excellent workshops that you do with runaway inequality. So that's what it made me think about at the same time that you made court. And just in about 30 seconds, give that information about the runaway inequality, workshops, because a lot of DI is probably going to be included in future workshops that, that you and I and Kay and Sam and, and others do when it comes down to DE&I. And when you look at what we do with runaway inequality, just kind of how that may kind of be and what the runaway inequality workshops, about.
To me, the runaway inequality workshops get at the economics of the issue, while also having us understand that everybody has been marginalized, from veterans to white people to black people to Asian Pacific Islanders. And so they give the economics and context of history for us to understand how social movements are born and how to really transform society and how to get out of our silos so that we can actually work towards equity for a better society.
Couldn't have stated that even better. Great. What were some of your takeaways, Pastor Oberman?
Well, so a couple of things. I'm really very thankful for the clear understanding that you and LaShawn made with the union and how it has always from the start been very inclusive of everyone. Mm-hmm. So when you think about everyone's minimum wage going up and everyone's access to health care, it's because of some of the things that were fought and won by the UAW. And to know that the idea of diversity means that every single person is entitled to and can own participation, right? It's what I bring to the table. I am, by the Constitution and by the laws that we have created, I have the right to bring Pastor Jean there, right? And you, by the law, can't say the Pastor Jeans of the world can't come. Yes. That is the thing that I appreciate the most in this conversation, and the fact that what Pascal is saying, that the NAACP and the power of the collective voice was able to go into the city of Westland because of the challenges that it had in the past with the way they treated others, right? You weren't belonging. Law enforcement said you weren't. Housing said you weren't. And we had a conversation with the mayor and council at that time. And Bill said, well, what do we do? And the Western Wayne County NAACP sat with them and council, and we came up with a resolution that went across the board. And out of that collective power of the NAACP, Pasquale is able to sit here and not only sit here, but he influenced the United States on a conversation that we had on Tuesday. And they're saying, how do we do like you've done in Westland? So to understand that by not blocking a Gina Wilson Stewart and a Pastor Velma Jean, you're allowed to create vision in community that affects the entire country. So I'm just very thankful for what we're able to do together, and very thankful that you and LaShawn came, understanding that when you have an international director sitting among you, you have reach,
Yes.
right? And when you have the young woman over the women in the UAW, because I was one that was UAW and salary. And when I had my youngest son, who's now 31, they told me, you know you've ruined your career in salary at Ford Motor Company. I said, you're absolutely right. Salary, I remember my beginnings. As of today, I'm going back to the UAW. I left $50,000 to do that.
Wow.
But I would not retire any way but a union member. So I understand this big collective picture. Now to get the rest of our listening and viewing audience to say, I don't quite understand, but I want to know more.
Yes.
And that's all we need, is for the opportunity to explain and do a deeper dive in any conversation. So very thankful for you today allowing us this opportunity.
Well, I definitely would love to have you come back again and continue this conversation, because I was alluding to, I think before we took the first break with you two before, when you look at the young people, you look at the seniors, bless you. When you look at the seniors,
God
are
bless you.
they as interested, especially the young generation, are they as interested about DEI? You know, do you think that do you think that we need to do more of like workshops, or, you know, having more conversations about DE&I than we're having right now?
Actually, I think young people are extremely concerned. And when we talk about ICE and they're taking away their parents, that's a generational life event that's going to forever change the trajectory of that child. And so not only does it matter for them, but it is something that I believe is going to organize them in a different way. Because I believe that our generation is furthest removed from when we had segregation in the United States. And so this is the first time that we are actually hearing overt, and it's not covert anymore. I mean, they're just pretty much just saying, you know, yes, that, you know, Black people aren't qualified. They don't deserve to be in these spaces. Even when we were talking about the air traffic controllers or even pilots, we know statistically 96% are white. And so these are the things that we're having to rub up against. And so I think that young people are actually going to be mobilized in a different way, because a lot of times what happens is that when we are almost too far removed from the experiences of the struggle, then we think that we've transcended it, only to realize in a moment like this that we have not.
It's very good.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Pastor, so now when we talked before about with the church and the inspiration, you know, with the church, kind of do a little deeper dive when it comes down to the spiritual part, you know, about this, and, you know, to look at what do we need to do to keep letting people know to stay focused, stay inspired, stay encouraged by young leaders like Ashley.
Yes. So just to really take a deeper dive, and thank you for bringing that up, when we think about what the current leadership was able to do, he galvanized the church to be against DE&I. And it was all saying, they're going to turn your children into this. They want to educate your child and make them this. They wanted to take one scripture and make it the entire Bible. We were able to say, I hate this group, forgetting that Christ himself says, love everyone, right? He didn't say, don't love a homosexual. But he was able, as the leader, to galvanize people around that level of hate. And what we see, and what breaks my heart, is that we're willing to ignore that you can still use divide and conquer in faith. That has never been the will of God. It should never be a part of any church. I believe the word of God say, allow the wheat and the tare to grow up, and God himself will do the separating. I find that people that are different than me oftentimes have the love of God eluding from them if I chose to look at it. But instead, we choose to look at what is different from me and begin to assess them by my standards and not by his standards. So I believe this is a great opportunity for the body of Christ to really become his eyes, his ears, his heart in a dying world, where we say, God, I'm with you 100%. If you made them, you love them. And that's pretty hard sometimes because he made you know who. And just like a lot of wayward sons, some of us get way out and we get way to the pig pen before we realize that our Father has everything. So, and not only do we get there, but we take others with them, right? And we allow others to believe that there's some truth in what we're saying. Because I was trying to figure out the entire time, how is it possible that we all thought this would be okay as Christians? And that we were content with judging and pointing our fingers and saying this person is the one that is like this and the whole world should be on this side. And it's hard.
Well, you know,
it's very hard.
It's so interesting because when you think about a lot of people, it's hard to look at when we talk about religion and politics.
Yes.
And that's something that's really kind of getting into play right now, because here you're looking at how the churches are affected by the politics of the president. And just like you were saying about looking at the separation of the LGBTQIA population, you know, when it comes down to even in religion now, you know, as well as like in the labor, you know, industry and like in the military and, you know, so many others. But I want to ask you both, because I know we're you know, closing the segment up shortly, but I definitely want to extend the invitation for you two to come back, you know, again. But Ashley, is there something else that you know, I asked that to Pascal, I've asked that to LaShawn, but are there any other misconceptions that you see that we haven't touched upon? And I'll ask you the same thing, Pastor Overman, but are there any others that you see that we need to talk about and expose today?
So one of the things, and this is, I'm going to go first from a ministerial lens because that's what I was just listening to. It's interesting because one of the things that I was thinking about is that really religion in America has evolved into DE&I, and people don't recognize that. We aren't having wars over it. We might have like a difference in ways of thinking about it, but I often thought about that because some people would say that church is the most segregated day in America. I've heard that a lot. Part. But in reality, it's the day where we get to actually commune with God in the way that we see God. And I don't think that God is as exclusive as our narrow-mindedness is. And so that was one of the things that I was thinking about. And then I was also thinking about the history of the Black church. Because when you're talking about young people, what we don't really conceptualize is that before the Civil Rights Movement, historically Black colleges and universities were birthed out of the Black church because we were often excluded from educational institutions. We were also excluded from houses of worship. You had white parishioners or European parishioners, you know, who were sitting on the floor level, and then Black parishioners who were up top, and they would preach liberation to the floor level and preach oppression to the higher level.
That's right.
And so this is the tradition of which we come, and we cannot exclude the politics from religion because Jesus was political. Anytime he was challenging, especially when he flipped the table, he was challenging the system of authority that said that you had to pay taxes and that you also could only find salvation through this view of God. Yes. And it's no different than what's actually happening now. And so we can't look at it mutually exclusive. And I'm not ashamed to say, my pastor, Reverend Dr. Wanda Anthony, has always made it clear to us who God is, but also who we are in relation to God. And we have to get back to the freedom schools because our children are going to need that, because it is going to teach them the history of the ability to stand up no matter the Goliath. Right. And people don't conceptualize that's why we need faith. And then on the labor end, I thought a great deal about our understanding from an economic standpoint of why we had to stay together. Because anytime they would exploit one group, then they would exploit them at the expense of ourselves. And so we had to learn how to work together. And it is through our collective bargaining that actually creates that unity, because I get to meet people of all walks of life. One of my mentors, he comes from a whole different demographic than I do. But we're able to have conversations about our cultural differences. And it's through our connection through the workplace that we began a relationship that has helped to mentor me to this day. And people don't realize that when you talk about DE&I, it's built on relationships. is built on building a connection and a community with people who look differently than you. And I also want to make another comment, because I think that nobody's talking about this, but when we're talking about immigration and ICE, you cannot tell someone's ethnicity by looking at them.
Right.
And I say that because I'm a person that's Black and Italian.
Yes.
But I've had people come up to me and decide what I am.
Yes.
But you can't see who I am or all that I am just on the sleeve of the
On your
visual.
melanin.
Yes. And so it's really, they're coming after what we know to be non-European. But at the end of the day, who defines that?
Right.
And so that's one of the other things that I think we should really explore, because it's something that we're seeing across the board as we see veterans, American citizens now being gathered by ICE as well.
That's good.
That's interesting, because Jim and I were having this conversation, and your name was brought up when we were talking about that. And then I was talking to the county county treasurer up in Cass County, and that's Hope Anderson, and we were talking about the same thing, you know, because of the melanin in her skin.
Mm-hmm.
But and that's so true, because people look at you and they see different ethnicities, or do they? You know, or they may kind of lump you into one ethnicity versus not really knowing. And that was the whole thing that was occurring when it came down to former presidential candidate Kamala Harris.
Oh, yeah. Kamala, right.
You know, because there was a lot of question about that part, you know, as
they
to
did them both.
was she, you know, and that was one of the things that, you know, Trump was kind of, you know, bringing to light during his campaign, you know, about is she, you know, and that kind of thing. And then just like you were saying, Pastor Overman, even when it came down to President Barack Obama,
That's right.
the same thing.
The same thing.
So I'm gonna let you, in terms of, say, Pastor Overman, kind of give some of your, you know, when you talk about the religious aspect, and that was so, you know, listening to Ashley, you know, and so eloquently stated, you know, how she was saying it. But I'm gonna let you give your comments in terms of, especially when it comes down to religion and politics.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, and there will always be a Goliath. So we know that, but the one thing that I think we have to own is that we've seen this before, but we were actually the target as people of color. We were the ones that you couldn't marry. The Bible said so, remember? That was a part of Scripture. Your child was going to be something special. Remember, this is how they divided hate. And when I say they, it could be any group that decide they're going to figure out a way to divide and conquer. And I love what you said about the union. I know you're doing that. So now our strategy is to remain cohesive and together as one voice. And I think that's a great opportunity for those of us that's doing this work, is that with DE&I, is that we be one voice, a consistent message, and to make sure that we destroy myths along the way. In our church, it is so important, because I'm the radical there. I believe that the love of God is too great for him to die for 6 people that will be in the same building on Tuesday. And that's what we've done with faith. We've narrowed it down to, if you're baptized like me, you look like me, you're willing to listen and follow instructions that I give you like me, and that God who created everything. And Gabby and I was looking at Venus in alignment, and I did the picture because the moon and everything was in alignment this month, because I'm a STEM nut and I'm trying to get that for my granddaughter. So I looked up and I saw so much. It's just like us sitting in this space. We're in this confined space, but the entire universe is still going on. And what we've done to God and the whole conception of God is we've put him in this bottle.
Yes.
But we have enough sense to know that the universe is still going on. But we still want to define God in America, in our churches. If it's on Outer Drive or if it's on Henry, then they'll be in heaven. Imagine that.
Yeah.
And we teach that for generations as a truth. And we've done that throughout time. But I believe this is the greatest opportunity of all when we talk about DE&I, to be conclusive in our decision to be inclusive of all, and allow them to participate with their level of excellence, believing that God really did create man in his image, would make us all like him, worthy of honor and respect. And at the same time, if you agree to disagree, to respect you.
Well, this
and not kill you.
this 2 hours has gone by so fast.
Yes.
And we've got to wrap up. I definitely hope that you both will come back again so we can talk about the next steps and are the next steps being followed.
Well,
So
that's
again, I want to thank everybody for being on the show with us today.
It's a
I want
great
to
show.
thank Ashley Lewis. I want to thank Pastor Velma Jean Overman. I want to thank LaShawn English.
Yes.
And I want to thank C. Pascal Easy for being on the show and bringing truth to power. I'm your host, Darwin Griffin, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great rest of the day.
Justice for Mario Willis. Truth. Facts